Hi there. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we plan and scope our AI automation projects in my AI agency. Now, I know this might not sound like the sexiest topic, but if you want to build your first automations or even scale your AI agency, having a planning and scoping framework in place is really crucial. Most people jump straight from idea to building, but in my experience, planning and mapping out projects before building directly impacts the quality and the success rate of your automations, and down the line will really improve client satisfaction and even conversion rates. So in this video, I'll show you the 4-step framework we use in our agency to plan and deliver AI automation projects. Now, if you don't know me yet, I'm Ben. I've been running an AI agency since 2023. I also run a community with founders, professionals, and builders active in the AI space. And if you're a business looking to adopt AI into your business, you can also book us in for a free call in the description below. Now, before starting, a quick disclaimer. This is not the only way to plan and deliver AI automation systems. This is just what works for me and my team, and hopefully it can help you. And second of all, I'm going to focus this framework on delivering automation systems to clients. Now, even if you're not doing this for clients or not doing it for clients yet, and you're just trying to build your own automation systems, I think this framework will really help you understand how to, first of all, plan out these projects, and second of all, improve the outcome of your automation systems. And lastly, this framework can really be applied to any of the no-code automation softwares, whether you work on N8N, Relevance AI, Make.com, or any other. This should be helpful for any of these. Now, as I said before, most people jump straight into step 3, the development phase, which is understandable. It's the most exciting one. But in my experience, and I've learned the hard way, it is really important to cover those first 2 steps first, right? So first we have the project scoping. And in the project scoping, we're really trying to get clarity, first of all, on the specific problem we're trying to solve or the need we're trying to fulfill, right? Because in the end, any of these automation systems, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to resolve either a business or a personal need or problem, right? And we also want to get clarity, of course, on the objectives, the specific requirements, and the metrics for the automations. Then from there, we can dive into the system design. And in this part, we're actually going to design and establish a process, right? Because very rarely are we actually automating an existing perfectly well-defined process or system. Most of the time, we have to establish and design the process in the first place, and then we can actually automate it, right? Most businesses are very messy and don't have well-defined processes in place. So once we have done that, we can actually make a roadmap and with that, a proposal. And from there, we actually dive into the development where we build, test, debug step by step, and implement error handling at the end. And then lastly, of course, we deploy and optimize. Again, rarely are these automation systems perfectly optimized for business at the first try, which is perfectly fine. But we do have to plan it into our process and iterate and improve based on real world usage and feedback. So let me go through them one by one so you get a better idea. So in the project scoping, what we're really trying to do is get all the necessary information to be able to design a system and to judge the feasibility of the project, right? Is it actually doable? Now, key here is to mention that we're only trying to get the necessary information, not all information, right? Automation projects can get very complex very quickly, and normally lots of little details and feedback and extra information is necessary from clients to be able to scope out a project 100%, right? We're not trying to do that. We're only trying to get the necessary information to be able to design the system and to judge the feasibility. Now, we usually try to do that in maximum the first 2 meetings. And from there, we send the proposal and wait for client payment. And all the extra details we'll figure out in the onboarding call, which is the first call after payment, and even during client fulfillment. Now, why do we do this? Because again, as I said, automation complex become very complex very quickly, and usually lots of little details and back and forth are necessary with clients. So if you do this all upfront, right, you try to scope out the entire project before closing a client, you're first of all going to spend a lot of time with meetings, waiting for client feedback through emails. That can literally take weeks, multiple meetings. You're adding in lots of frictions. You have to wait for clients to send emails back with specific data points, etc. And in this process, lots of deals fall through, right? I've learned this the hard way, and I've seen it happen around me too. Um, you don't want to spend so much time on scoping out a project for a client not to convert at the end, right? So it's really important, in my experience, the smaller the time window between the first call and the proposal sent, the higher the likelihood of conversion, right? So of course, we do need the necessary information to judge the feasibility and to design a system, but we don't need all the details. We can do that during client fulfillment, right? So very important. So what are the necessary details? In my experience, it is first of all, again, defining the problem, right? Really important. A lot of times companies can't actually really define the problem that well at the beginning, and you have to dig through a little bit. A lot of clients come, for example, with solutions. I need this, but not attacking the problem. And in the end, they hire us to resolve business problems or business needs, right? So it's really important for us to really understand the problem so we can design the best system to resolve that problem and the most efficient. For example, a client comes with, I need a voice agent for inbound leads, but his actual problem is conversion rates, right? So that's in the end the problem we're trying to resolve. So maybe there's a better way. Maybe that's a voice agent, but maybe there's another way, right? I'm going to give you an example of this in a second. Then second, we want to define the outcome. Now, this is also really important, which becomes a lot easier, of course, when we have to find the problem. Is like, what should the outcome be? Now, it's very important here again to get examples and specific requirements from the client on what the outcome should be. First of all, because we can use that to reverse engineer our system or our build, right? Because in the end, we have to work backwards from an end result and define what steps we have to take in the middle to get to that final outcome. And second of all, it aligns expectations, right? If we get a specific outcome from a client, we know that if we can deliver a similar outcome, that the client will probably be happy with it, right? So really important to get that clear. Now, clients, again, will not always have output examples, but even if they don't, let's say they ask for a personalized email system, it can be a good idea to ask them, look, write me one or two emails that are good personalized emails in your industry. And because then we can work backwards from those emails and also know that if we can produce an email like that, the client will most likely be happy. Now, sometimes, of course, a client will also rely on your domain expertise to actually write a good personalized email, but then you want to probably first define the outcome to the client so you align expectations. Then the third one that's really important is defining the triggers and the input data. So when should this specific automation or project run, right? And what data do we have access to, right? Really important to know what data we can work with to get to the final outcome, right? Then fourth, of course, we need to know which softwares need to be integrated into the system. Also, again, to judge feasibility. Do these softwares actually have APIs? And second of all, also to create an onboarding document, for example, where they can find the API keys, etc. And lastly, we also have to define the volume and the budget for this specific automation. How often is this automation expected to run, or should it run, right? And what's the budget or usage cost for this specific automation? Like, let's say it's a process that's not really solving a big need in a company, and it's going to cost quite a lot in usage costs. Well, then it's probably not a very good project for the business, and it won't help their ROI, right? So it's important to define this in those first meetings to again align expectations. Right, so let me give you a quick example. So for context, this was a recent client of ours that had a coaching business, and I think it's a good example because of the scoping and planning phase, we actually ended up with a different system than the client originally asked for. Now, basically, how the problem of this coaching business was they ran a lot of LinkedIn ads and got in lots of leads through those ads. But their sales reps were overwhelmed with the amount of leads. And basically, their workflow was the qualified leads should be booked into a meeting and the unqualified ones should be sent to a lower ticket offer. Right now, the big problem was, as I mentioned here, right, the sales reps were overwhelmed with volume, don't have enough time to manually review leads and set up meetings with qualified ones, right? This, of course, resulted in slow follow-up times for the qualified ones, meaning they left some money on the table there. It impacted the conversion rates and, of course, after that, the top line revenue. Right now, client suggested an AI voice agent to automatically call qualify leads to set up a meeting. Now, I put here some example questions you can ask if you talk to a client to get to the bottom of the problem. Right, I'm gonna make sure to share all the documents and the presentation of this video in the community if you're interested. So anyway, after finding the problem, right, we try to define the outcome. Now, again, I put in some example questions here, but the outcome, of course, for them, the ideal outcome is qualified leads automatically were right away booked in for a meeting, and the unqualified ones are sent a personalized email with a low ticket offer. Now, I tried to ask for the qualification criteria, which is obvious that we want to know what is a qualified lead and an unqualified lead. And that's the funny thing, they didn't have that defined well yet. So really important, I didn't wait for those qualification criteria before sending the proposal. Right? I know I can figure that out once we get started, right? In the onboarding, give them some time, let their team talk. But first, we're going to close the deal. And we know once we have that, we can implement that, right? Then for the triggers and the input data, pretty obvious here. Of course, it should be triggered as soon as a lead filled out the LinkedIn lead form, right? And from that LinkedIn lead form, we got the following data points, which is the name, email, LinkedIn URL, and the company URL, which is optional, which is also important, by the way, to know, right, if they're optional fields, because if we count this in and we design a system based on, we know we have the company URL, our system will break, right? So that's why these input fields, have it well defined, what you always have available is very important, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to design a system. Then for the softwares, right, and of course we need the LinkedIn ads. Go High Level was their CRM, and they already had a Synthflow account for the voice agent, but that was optional. We could switch that for another one too, they said. And then lastly, for the volume and budget, so they had around 150 new leads per day. So that would be the amount of times this automation would run. And for the budget of this automation, the alternative was to hire more sales reps to be able to handle all of these leads. And so budget really won't be an issue for this one, because I know this automation is not going to cost more than 1 or 2 employees. So if you're new to this, I can imagine the hard thing is in the beginning, understanding what projects are actually feasible and what not, right? And I think the intuitive thing for people who are new to this and maybe have their first client or their first 2, 3 clients is they want to scope out everything, right? To make sure that it's actually possible, that they can actually do it before closing the client. But again, right, I highly recommend to keep the time window between the first call and proposal and client paying as short as possible, even though you might not know what you're doing yet, right? So why is that? Because first of all, you have to show trust and confidence to these clients, right? And you can only do that when you actually can talk confident with them. Second of all, most of the time you will figure it out during the process. And thirdly, in the worst case scenario, you wire them back their money and you've learned a lot, right? Because during these client projects, you actually learn the most, right? This is at least the approach I took with the first 4 to 5 clients. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just jumped in, showed confidence, tried, and I was able to figure out all of the projects during the project. And it's also where I learned the most, right? So highly recommend you take a little bit of risk. It's not risk in the end, right? But just jump in and try it, because that's where you're really going to learn. Which brings us to the second point, the system design, which I've broken down into 4 steps, right? First, we want to, as I said before, we want to reverse engineer, right? And think backwards from the outcome, right? What do we need to do to get to the outcome? So we already know this company needs qualified leads need to be booked in as quickly as possible, and unqualified leads need to be followed up with, ideally with a personalized email sequence or something to the low ticket offer. Right now, in order to get there, of course, we first need to know what is a qualified lead, right? So we need a lead qualification or a lead scoring system. And in order to qualify or score leads, we actually need data on those leads, right? So we need to research leads, right? Which brings me to the second point, which is break it up, right? This is really important. I think also when you're starting, break these larger projects or any project really up into smaller parts or phases, how we call them, or sub projects, right? And basically the way you want to think about it is like, what's the shortest path to deliver value or a win to the client? Now, why do you want to do this? Because first of all, we're still in the early adopter phase, right? Most companies are extremely skeptical still with automation services, with AI in general, etc. The quicker we can show value and we can show that these systems actually work to the client, the more likely they will stick with us, right? That first of all. And second of all, we don't want to scope out the entire large project just yet, again, because we might need more details to actually do that. And second of all, we overcomplicate, right? We want to if you come from startup world, you want to have an MVP approach. What's the minimum viable product that delivers value to the company, right? And build on top of that, right? Iterate, improve, and add on top of it, right? So if we look at this project, I would break it up into three phases or three sub-projects, which is first, the lead research, second, lead qualification, and third, the actual voice agent or email sequences, right? Now, why? Because the lead research most likely will already have lots of value to the company, right? Because if I can find relevant data points for the sales reps, put them in their CRM, they'll probably already save a lot of time when researching leads, or they can quickly tell which leads are qualified and which ones not. Is it an ideal system? Not, no, but it is better than their current system. So, and second of all, they'll probably be better prepared for the meetings. So that would be my first phase, right? Second phase would be lead qualification, and the third one that I would add another point. If you have a client that wants multiple or lots of automations, which happens too, right? They have lots of ideas in mind. Start with the one that's the quickest and easiest to deliver with high leverage for the company, right? That really delivers a lot of value to the company. In general, I wouldn't recommend running multiple automations in parallel at the same time, because again, right, MVP approach, we need to show something, iterate, improve. Rarely is it perfect on the first try. And if you're going to run 3 or 4 automations at the same time, it's going to be very chaotic. So in general, I recommend going one by one and focus on the highest leverage ones first. Of course, some companies that need to do a lot and have a big budget, you can start doing this. But I think the best when you're starting out is just to go one by one. Now, the best way to design the system is to quickly use a diagramming software, right? Even if it takes you 10, 15 minutes, it's going to really help you save time in the long term. Because you already understand dependencies and things like that through diagramming. So I use FigJam, which is free. It's from Figma. But some people use Whimsical, Draw.io. I think it's also free, or Lucidchart. And I highly recommend you do this, especially if you get started. So let me show you a quick example of how I would do this for this project, for example. So again, I've already broken it down in my head into 3 phases. So I'm not going to work backwards all the way from the voice agent, etc. I'm going to first focus on phase 1, which is the lead research, right? And we know the outcome, right? Because we already have that information in our scoping, right? So the outcome ideally is an enriched CRM or enriched lead, right, in the CRM, right? That would be the outcome. Now, what data points do we need in that outcome? We got that from the scoping call. All right, so these are relevant data points for the sales reps. So we can just add them here. So we know what we need to get to. And we also know that the trigger is LinkedIn ad. So we can add in the trigger. I can give it a different color. So we know it's the trigger. And we know the input data or the input fields, LinkedIn ads, are the name, right, email, the LinkedIn URL, and the company URL. But that one was optional, right? So now we know this is the information we have, and this is the outcome, the ideal outcome, right? So what's the shortest path from A to B, right? That's what we have to define right now. Now, if you're completely new to this, it's going to take you a bit more time and figuring out if what's possible and what not. If you have more experience, this will be a lot easier. And eventually for these simple ones, you don't even need to, because you've already done them a few times. So you know how to resolve this, but it's still good to plan this out. So I already know these 3 data points, right? Lead summary, the current job title, and the years of experience. We can get easily with the LinkedIn scraper, right? Which you can do with Apify, right? Which is, you can use in any of the no-code automation software, right? So we can use the LinkedIn scraper, and we basically can cover these 3 data points already. The company size and the company summary, we don't really get from the LinkedIn scraper, because of course we're scraping the personal LinkedIn, right? So we can, for example, if the company URL is available, right, which is a dependency or which is logic, a condition, then we can scrape the website, for example, right? Scrape website, where we can at least get the company overview. Company size, not necessarily. So if company URL is available, right? Then I already know that if you scrape this personal LinkedIn profile, you sometimes also get the company LinkedIn URL from the company they currently work for. Now, it's because I already know. That's why this is not always possible to perfectly define at the beginning, right? When you're building, you're going to add some things and you're going to see some new things, but it's still good to get that initial idea, right? So for example, we can say here, scrape company LinkedIn URL, but only if, right? Only if company LinkedIn URL is available. Now we know this. Now, if both are not available, we have to go directly here. Right, and maybe in this case, we don't have the company size yet, so we can add in another condition, right, and basically add in that same one and also scrape this one, right? So if the company LinkedIn URL is available, we'll scrape both the website and the company LinkedIn URL, and then we get all the data points. Right, now, of course, we need to add in a language model first, right, to extract all of this data, right? So LNM, right, and this extract data points. Right, now, there is a possibility we don't have access to any of this, right? But we know at least for this route and for this route, we have all the data points. Now, of course, it can also be this route. In this route, we miss the company size, right? And in this route, we miss the company overview and company summary, right? So that's why I put this asterisk there, because we won't always have access to this in the future. Right now, of course, what we can do is add in lots more scrapers, Google search scraper, etc., to try and do everything we can to try and find this, right? But again, we're designing an MVP first, right? This is already going to help this company a lot more than what they currently have, which is nothing, right? Or they have to manually look it up, right? So we're first going to start with this, and we can always add on top of it. And it's important to note this, because now we also know that if we're gonna then add in the lead qualification later, we can also tell the company that these are the data points we can work with, and these are not always available. Right now, I'm thinking about it already. If this is not available, you can probably say it's an unqualified lead because he doesn't currently work for someone. But again, you can let them decide that. So this I would define as phase one. Right, and I already know this is quite easy to do. Right, so this won't take me longer than a week or two, right? And we can show a clear win to them in a week or two, right? And from there, of course, you can add on top of this, right? So we can go with the, let's say we keep this in phase one, right? Then we could go with the lead qualification, right? And here we already know we need some data from them, right? It's like, what is a qualified lead? Right, so this is a dependency which we put into the proposal. Right, and again, that needs to be updated. Right, and that would probably be phase two. Again, that could probably be done in a week. But again, usually these systems need, once they're deployed, people use them a bit, they'll see, oh, Ben, can't you add another data point, right? So we have to actually adjust this. That's usually in the real world how it goes, right? Can we add in another this, and then we find another scraper we can add so we can get another data point, things like that. Instead of designing this whole email sequence already for unqualified leads, we are still at the beginning of this automation, right? And I could deliver it in a week, but they could ask for optimizations and it could take another 1 or 2 weeks, right? So we don't want to spend too much time on scoping out all the work at the back, right? So lead qualification, updated CRM with the lead score, right? That would be phase two. And like that, we continue, right? And of course, like from here, we would go, let's say the voice agent, right? And uh, email sequence. Now, again, here there are going to be lots of dependencies again, right? It's like what happens if someone doesn't answer the voice agent? Where does it need to update, in which calendar? What happens? Do we have to send them to an email sequence if they don't answer? What happens if they're not interested? Things like that. So we don't want to go through all the details. We already know this is going to be a little bit of a bigger project, so we can sort of give it a timeline. So I'd give this 1 to 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks, and this probably a little bit longer. But that's what we then can put in the proposal, right? And I can already tell you, we delivered this to the client after a week or two. They loved it, and it already helped their sales process so much by just having these data points available in their CRM. Then we added this part, which actually took quite a while for them to figure out their own lead qualification system. And I helped them out with it a bit. And after that, they actually decided they don't even need the voice agent, because this lead qualification system worked so well that it could just filter by the top leads. That reduced down the amount of leads for the sales reps so much that they could easily handle the amount of leads. And we ended up only adding the email sequence for the unqualified leads, right? But it just shows you that, breaking it up into phases is really important, right? And also to show quick wins, because again, these guys had no idea what's possible with AI. They were a bit skeptical. After only seeing this, which is really basic, right? They were blown away, right? But this just magically appearing in their head into their CRM, they were amazed. That's how easy it is a lot of the times. So that's it. From there, we basically, once we have an idea of this, and of course you get faster at this, and after a while, especially for these simpler ones, you don't have to map it out completely. You already have it in your head. But from there, we send a proposal, right? And I'm going to show you a quick example too. So then you can add those phases into the proposal, right? And usually we add an onboarding doc, or we do it in the onboarding call, right? Where we actually set up the integrations with the software, right? So let me show you a quick example. So this is an unrelated proposal, right? But just so you get an idea. So we have the breakdown of the phases, right? Then we have phase one with an estimated time frame per phase, right? Now, in this case, it was an even larger project. So we broke phases up into sub phases even, right? But you get the idea. And then we have the subphase, for example, in this case, lead research and update CRM, right? The action, what are we going to do, right? And the output, what can they expect, right? What's the end result of this first phase, and the dependency. Now, in this case, none, but let's say in that second phase, a dependency can be, we need to have the lead research, but also we need to have the lead qualification criteria, right? And for the third one, we need an example of a personalized email, etc. Right now, that's sort of how we lay it out then. And now for prices, we do always do subscription-based pricing. It works by far the best in our experience, because again, uh, most of the time when you deliver, let's say this first phase, in this case, for example, the client loved it, but they wanted some extra data points, which is perfectly fine, right? We want to add and improve on the system. But if we've already quoted them for a specific project like that, and they want to add things on top, we have to quote them again. We're adding friction to the process. So because they're on a subscription model, there's a lot less friction. We can improve, add on existing projects, and they will understand too that the exact timelines won't be complied with if they want to add something to the first automation, etc. So it becomes a lot more flexible and a better relationship, in my experience, if it's subscription based pricing. Because if you do this project based, you either have to scope out all the needs and the entire project completely, which is going to take you lots of time, right? And if they then want to add something on top, or something doesn't work, then you would have to add another quote on top of that. And again, it just adds friction. So highly recommend the subscription model. And that's it. And then we do the onboarding call where we explain how to integrate the softwares, right? We always set it up in their accounts. And that's it. And then the next phase, of course, is we're actually building it. Now, I'm not going to show you actual building. I have many videos on my YouTube channel if you're interested in learning how to build. But I'll show you quickly the steps we take when we are developing these systems. First, we build and test step by step, right? So we make sure that every node or module or step works before adding the next one. Now, again, you can predict sort of the edge cases and where it can go wrong, but also don't over optimize, right? Again, have the MVP, minimum viable product mindset in mind when developing this, right? If the automation fails, maybe on 2 of 100 leads, right? Because the LinkedIn can't be scraped, etc. It's fine, right? It's still going to add a lot of value to the company, and it's a win for the company, right? Because before this, they had nothing, right? So we can add 2 or 3 more weeks or whatever onto the automation by getting it perfect. But if we can get a 90 or 95% solution in a lot shorter time frame, we should aim for that, right? Of course, there are exceptions where there are really important tasks that cannot, absolutely nothing can go wrong, right? That's a different scenario, but in general, right, aim for the MVP approach, right? And then iterate and improve, of course, on the system once it's in production and being used in the real world, right? And once you get feedback from the client, which is really important for you to be able to improve the system, right? Then once you've built the entire phase or the system, then you are going to test it on ideally 10 to 100 examples, right? Usually need to do some debugging there and improve the system there already. Then we usually add in error handlers, right? We always add in these retry mechanisms for API modules, especially if you have large volume automations. APIs fail. It's very common, right? Because we're relying on their servers and things go wrong. The easiest way is most of these no-code automation softwares already have these error handlers built in, right? I can show you quickly in make.com. But we always add in these break modules for APIs, right? So let's say the Google Docs, right? So how do you do this? I can show you quickly. Here you have, these are basically error handlers, right? So we have break, commit, ignore, resume, rollback. In general, break is enough, right? And basically what break does is if it fails, it will try again with a delay, right? So here we can define how many times, usually 3 with a 15-second interval. We already resolve 90% of these issues, right? Now you can also add in ignore, etc. But really, we don't use any more than this. In NADN, you can also really easily do it, right? In any API module and any module, really, you can go on settings and then retry on fail. Right? Again, max tries and wait between. Right, so we always add in this make.com. If a scenario completely fails, usually you get a notification anyway. And in NADN, you can also add in separate workflows to actually notify you when specific errors happen in your workflow, etc. I'll probably make another video on error handling if you're interested in it. Here I have an example, right? But I'll make sure to share these workflows too in the presentation. So that's it. And then lastly, we deploy, of course, and that's where it sometimes just starts, right? After getting feedback, after the company trying it out, you usually, they get lots of ideas on how to improve the system, how to add things to the system, how to iterate on the system, etc. So you'll have a cycle here of improvement, right? And adding things. And of course, if everything's running really smoothly, we can continue with the next automation or the next phase in this case and expand on the current automation. Now, I highly recommend when you're working with clients to open up a Slack channel with them or invite them into your Slack channel to have a direct line, because this is really required with these automations. You're really working inside of their business. So it's really important. You're in line, you understand, you constantly need some things from them, etc. So of course you don't want to overdo it, right? You don't want to be spamming them. You want to be professional, right? We usually try to limit our requests to once a week, but in general, it's good to have sort of this open line. And for us, Slack has been working the best. So that's it. I hope this helped some of you. I know it was very client focused, but I think if you're just building your first automations, this also gives you a good idea of how to plan out your first automations yourself, and maybe how to eventually sell this to clients too. Also, soon I'll make a video on this whole onboarding process, how we do it inside of our agency, because we basically automated the majority of these steps. From the meeting transcripts to the proposals, etc. So I'd love to show you because I think it's really interesting. And yeah, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.